Hey everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. Throat's a little rough from just the weather and allergies. It is gloomy here. But this is the first in the Prepper series. So, I mentioned in a previous vid that if you're wanting to prepare for things, the best course of action is to prepare for general problems. Because there's an association between this and like Civil War, societal collapse, Jesus coming back, things like that, when really you should be ready for a lot of things. It's not a question of conspiracy. It's more a question of common sense. And there's a few ways to go about doing this. You really need to ask yourself what you need in general circumstances. So that's really what the first one's about. It's just sort of basic things that you need that once you can square that away, you can start focusing on other aspects. So what are things that everybody needs in any situation? Well, first of all, it amazes me how many people think that this would constitute being paranoid, because everyone should have a first aid kit. You should have bandages. You should have hemostat of some sort. I personally think it's also good to have a EpiPen. Strong advocate for people having that on them in general, because you might save somebody's life even if you don't have any allergies you're aware of. Rubbing alcohol, antibiotics if possible. You can buy fish antibiotics for dirt cheap, and they work on people, so don't worry, it's literally the same thing they give you at the doctor. Antibacterial ointments, things like that. You should have something, and again, that doesn't scream getting ready for the apocalypse. That's something you should have, period. Painkillers, that's another good one to have. So now we've covered injury. That's the big one, injury, because that's what will really mess a lot of people up when they're in an emergency situation. Is if you get hurt, you have to have some means of treating yourself. And that's the other thing, is there's two sides to prepping. It's literally the difference between being a mall ninja and being actually ready. You can have all sorts of nice fun tools and gadgets, but if you don't have the means of using them, it's not going to amount to anything. So I also recommend you take some sort of first aid class, some sort of form of education where if something goes wrong, you're ready to deal with that. You should be able to treat an injury, in other words. Do some brushing up, not at WebMD, just brushing up on how to see signs of certain diseases and how to treat them, very common ones. Know the difference in symptoms between streptococcus, strep throat, and the common cold, for example. Both may involve a sore throat, totally different in terms of how you treat them. One's 7-Up and chicken soup, and the other's an antibiotic, so be aware. Another thing highly recommend that people have is an array of weather-neutral clothes. That's a weird term, and I made it up, and I regret making it up now. What I mean by that is people are very used to being indoors and being outdoors for a very short period of time. And a lot of the things that people wear in their everyday life, because they're used to that, can lead to problems if they're actually outdoors for, say 12, 24 hours. It's not the same problem as when you're in a thin jacket and it's 30 degrees out and you shiver a little bit while you're walking from your taxi to Broadway and then back to your, New York apartment. And I'm not saying this in a derogatory way about New Yorkers. It was just a generic example. But have a lot of different clothing for different types of weather. It's going to call for that. A hat is very important. Preferably one with a wide brim. Dickies, Stetson, etc. Have a hat that has a brim on it. Similarly, have boots. Boots are very important too, because same thing with people they're used to walking to and from places. They're used to walking in the park or jogging in their neighborhood. If you have to walk a long way, like for hours, like your car breaks down and you got to get to the next gas station to get fuel for your car, and it's a 2-hour walk, 3-hour walk. That does happen in parts of Middle America, believe me. Are you wearing something that's going to blister your feet and lead to an infection? Are You're going to have to use up all that antibiotic ointment that I was talking about before on your feet. Get some good socks and some good boots that are comfy, that you can walk a long way in. Check reviews, ask around. Good boots and a good hat are both way, way, way understated when it comes to being outdoors for a long time. Because sun exposure and flies and parasites and things like that that'll go for your scalp, plus parasites that'll crawl up your legs like ticks, plus walking a long way, that adds up. It seems so little and minuscule, but it adds up. You know, I know so many people, they have like fire starting kits and food for 5 months and all this, but they don't have a hat or boots. That's important. Similarly, take better care of yourself if you're not in good shape. That's a big part of it too. I see a lot of people who are, again, the whole mall ninja thing. They're, I'm ready, I got this and this and that, you know, and they're morbidly obese. And you mention that to them, they lose it. Well, guns are what matters, you know, emergency. No, come on. If you can't walk 3 hours, you can't deal with stuff like that. So those are some important things. First aid, everybody needs a first aid kit. I don't care what you think is going to happen tomorrow. You need a first aid kit. Everyone should have a hat and pair of boots in case they need to walk a long way. Everyone needs to be in good shape. Period. Oh, man. I'm kind of glad that I got that interruption, because it actually reminded me of something I wasn't going to bring up that I should bring up, which is communication. People a lot of times don't think about that either. A cell phone is always something good to have, and thankfully it's something most people think to have. But there are other things that you should consider when it comes to communication. You should absolutely learn certain signals, mirror code, even gunfire code, which is really simple and only for emergencies. Flag code is possible, though that's not something I've got a whole lot of credence for unless you're like some maritime type person. But also some sort of backup means of communication. Could be two-way radio between yourself and someone you trust. Could be Baofeng radios. I really like those. Could even be ham radio. Review Bra is really into that. But some means of communication via either training, studying it thoroughly, or via just having something as a backup and knowing how to use it. That's very important. Really, if you just look at the basic needs that people have, people need food, people need potable water, people need shelter, or at least a place to sleep, and people need treatment for injuries. Those are the four big ones that people need. And if you don't have the means of getting those things, if the grocery store closes for a day, then you're in trouble. It doesn't matter. I'm not talking about unrest. I'm not talking about aliens invading. By the way, I give credence to a lot of things. I'm not mocking some of these things. I'm just saying people who do deride it. Earthquakes, fires, just being locked out of your car on the interstate. There's things that happen, and you need to be ready for it. The first aid kit one blows my mind the most, though, because it's like, that doesn't even have to be a emergency in terms of like your community or your state or your country or the world. That could just be an emergency for you. Like you could fall. You could, break your leg in the shower or something. You need to have some means of dealing with that instead of relying 100% on the fact that somebody might come along and take you to the hospital. You need something in place. So, step one, if you don't have a first aid kit, get one. If you do have one, modify it for, whatever you think might go wrong. Because, problems in California are different from problems in Hawaii, are different from problems in the Yukon. They're different problems. And the same thing goes with what kind of hats or boots you might be wearing. If you're in the Yukon, you're probably better off with an Ushanka instead of a Dickie hat. In Hawaii, complete opposite. So, again, tune your needs to your geography. Right now, people are very detached from their geography. They have jackets or coats, but they don't know how to dress in layers. Learn how to dress in layers. Things like that. Be ready for if you're outside for a long time, longer than an hour, longer than 3 hours. Think about that. Think about what would happen if you didn't have a house to go back to for 4 days. Just think about what that ramifications would be. What could go wrong in those circumstances? What would you need to alleviate the problems for when those go wrong in those circumstances? Think about that. Next episode, I'm definitely going to be talking about potable water. Stay tuned for that. Like, share, subscribe. Keep asking questions. Bye.